You don't care.
I'm not quite sure what that means because I don't.
Yeah, because there's half sour, which is a little closer to a cucumber. It's not really pickled, but it could, as if you keep them in the jar in your fridge for a period of time, they gradually will become more pickled. So they're more sour.
So they're like sour. Double pickled?
So they're continuing the pickling process.
Okay.
So they're very green and fresh when they're half sour, which I like. So you still get an essence of cucumber.
So it's like, wait, so are regular pickles full sour? Is that what?
It depends on how you define regular.
Like the
pickles are cucumbers. So then you pickle them for X amount of time. Not that I've made them, but X amount of time, a longer period of time. So you have half sour, full sour. And then with the bread and butter, there's something else added that makes them sweet.
So the average pickle is full sour?
People, probably the default pickle is probably, dill, full sour.
Okay, so I've never had a half sour pickle. Yeah. I have not.
They're delicious, actually. Okay. I like them.
I'm going to have to try that. Because, what is the difference? Is it just less sour? Is that it? That's the only thing?
Yeah. Less sour, tastes more like a cucumber.
Oh, okay.
So you get the essence of the taste of cucumber that you don't necessarily get with something, because the pickling becomes the star the longer it stays in the pickling bath or whatever.
The longer it is brined.
It is brined, yep.
Okay.
Or pickled.
Yeah, brined, pickled. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but we started.
I figured this was the soft opener. We're like, pickles? It's okay.
How you been? I haven't seen you since, what is it?
I know. It's actually longer ago than we probably...
I think it was the fall of 2017 when we met.
Yeah.
In the last time we spoke.
Yep.
Because I was a student of Sue's.
Yep.
Taking a digital imaging class, which is essentially like photography, working with Photoshop kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Part of her curriculum for that class was a project where we have to work with a client to take. So it's like giving us a taste of working freelance photographers.
Yeah, in a real life setting.
Yeah,
that's her thing. Rather than just intellectually in school, like what if? Then you're really in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she set up this whole thing called the Studio Photography Incubator Project. I think that's what it was called.
Yep.
You know, every student was had their pick of whatever artist it would be at the Farmington Valley Arts Center, and they would take photos of their artwork.
So you were given, so that we have 20 or so artists here. So were you given images of all of the artists' work to choose from, or how did that picking process go?
I think there was a list of all of you and links to your respective pages on, say, the Farmington Valley Arts Center site.
Okay.
And then everyone just was able to, look through all your artwork and have their pick of whoever they wanted to photograph.
Okay. Whose work sort of just you connected with or spoke to you or looked interesting or for whatever reason. Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't look through too many. I was just like, I'll pick this one. It turned out to be you. And
it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, especially since you were in a way the co-coordinator of the project.
Yes.
With Sue.
Yes.
And so, for one, we could meet here anytime because you had keys
to everything
and stuff, and
a flexible schedule.
Yes, and that was great. And I think the photos I took of your artwork turned out pretty well. Yeah. Don't you think?
Well, so it's funny that you should say that. Yes, they did for sure. So everybody sort of came in with different entry points. So, I happen to do found object art, and sculpture, which is probably a little more challenging to photograph than maybe just a painting. And depending on who the photographer, student in the class was and the way they approach things, someone would come over and take pictures for a couple of hours and then they were done. Do you remember what we did, the whole process?
I know we spent...
You were thorough.
I was rather thorough.
Very thorough.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're probably quite thorough in life, but in that experience, you were very thorough.
In most cases, yes. Yeah.
All right. We'll have to get into that later. But it was one of those things. I'm an artist, but I'm also a retired teacher. So, I came in from another entry point, and it's like when you have a student who's into doing something, you're just going to kind of go, and someone who's really into it and wanting to do it well and being very thorough for a teacher, and an artist. But it's like, all right, yeah, let's do this. So you came over not once, but twice.
Was it twice?
Uh-huh.
I think it might have been the third time.
The third time was in the class when I came over to look at the images
in
the class.
Yeah.
So we spent probably 9 hours together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And other people were maybe an hour and a half. I'm done. So,
I had a grade writing on this.
Well, and you were very serious about it. Well, and the thing too that I think you understood right away, which maybe, I'm sure that Sue articulated this, but you basically wanted to make me, the client, satisfied with the project.
Yes, because that is the point.
Yeah, and you didn't want to insert yourself.
Yeah.
Into it. It's like, well, I like this, so I'm going to do it. You'd be like, Carol.
Have myself stand in front of your artwork and take a picture.
And do selfies. So it's like, no, that's probably not what the project is calling for.
No.
I mean, to the point of the reason I came out to your class, I mean, it was interesting because I hadn't been in Sue's class, of which, you were a student, and seeing how she taught and sort of seeing the whole climate, but you didn't want to choose you wanted me to choose the images that I felt best represented my work.
Yes.
Which was basically taking an extra step, which I appreciated as a client.
Yeah. And the reason for that was maybe not everyone realizes this at first when they're doing client work. You are working for someone. Mm-hmm. It's you just happen to be the one with the camera or the thing that's capturing, like in the case of yourself, you're an artist, you make artwork.
Yes.
It's your artwork that is on display, that is to be captured.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only that, but I'm not going to use your photos, except to like maybe show that I have experience in photography.
Exactly.
And so it is the point of it is that you are trying to find someone to take photos of your artwork because you're let's say you're not very experienced in photography.
Exactly.
You would say like, well, I don't know photography. I'm going to hire someone who does know photography to make sure I can get photos of my artwork that look good.
Yes.
In a way, it's like I'm a conduit. I just happen to be there with the camera to capture this. And, it's not my artwork. It's yours.
Right.
And I guess technically speaking, they're my photos, but they're of someone else's artwork.
Right.
So it's not exactly like I can claim ownership of that.
But you also have to get to know who the client is so that you can then maybe represent their voice or their vision, through an image. Because that's the reason that you're doing it. It's like, I'm not a photographer. I don't pretend to be. And, my hope was too, as we were having a conversation and having the whole experience, was that you would say, oh, I noticed this. I mean, I always like to see my artwork through someone else's eyes, which you getting to know me had to do that. Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, so, your work is very colorful. Is that something intentional? Or, gee, I noticed this on the corner when I'm taking the photo. Should we be highlighting that? There are questions that you asked through the process that, was not, when I'm making it, I'm not thinking about that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important for artists. Artists have to put their work out there. I mean, unless they choose to just kind of work in their studio and have sort of an interior artist life. Mm-hmm. But if you're putting it out there, you want to be able to put it out there in a strong way that communicates your message, in addition to the message that your artwork is communicating.
Now, I'm a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. I think you know that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much you know about the filmmaking process, but in a way, this like client work doing photography, it's almost like, I think of it almost like being a director, a film director.
Yes.
In the case of like, if I didn't write the project myself, if I didn't write the film, it's almost like I'm taking someone else's script, say your artwork, and I'm trying to problem solve to make sure it comes out the best it can be. Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I would think it would be hard to be objective. about something, it's because there are things that you're going to gravitate to or you're going to like, or you're going to, and you really have to maintain objectivity for, because you are working for the client. And if I say, oh, I think that you should take a photo of this with, a black light on it, you might say, well, that's not best practice. Or you'll say, well, maybe we give it a shot and look at it. I mean, just because you were learning too how to have a client.
Yes.
So, it was sort of a back and forth.
Not only that, but I was also kind of learning photography.
Right.
Because as I had taken a couple of photography courses at the college.
Yeah.
But like as an amateur photographer who doesn't have access to much gear aside from my camera.
Yes.
We suddenly had these like couple of lights in the studio, big lights.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
legit photo
well,
lights.
I only ever like use available light because I don't have any lights to work with. So it was a new experience for me to learn how to light.
Yes. And that's, photography is light. So having that component of then, because that was something that actually you and I worked on a bit, where I had like the chair, a chair, head on, no. And we learned as we kind of went through it, a head on picture of a chair straight on, not as interesting as catching it at an angle, like with the right front leg on the diagonal.
Yeah.
So many different moving parts. And I learned a lot doing it too, because, as we had the conversations and then you take the picture and we both look at it and we could pretty much tell. It was like, nope. Yep. Oh, let's try that then. And then the second session is if memory serves, you were reshooting things based on what you had learned in the first session.
Yes.
Which is, what, as a teacher, that's what you want to have happen.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, oh, that was good enough. But you're like, you know what? I learned how the lights worked for those things. Let's go back and shoot those same pieces again and a few others with this knowledge.
Right.
So.
Because, in the end, it couldn't hurt. If the first ones were the best they could be, then we take the other ones and no, the first ones were better. And then if it turns out the new technique in these other shots turns out to be even better, it's like, well, we found it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a process that ends there, but it definitely is that the new knowledge is applied to the situation going forward.
Yeah.
So just back to the analogy with directing a film. Differences and similarities. I mean, in where you are now, is film more interesting than still photography, or what? What do you think about comparing those?
The thing is, I'm not much of a photographer. The passion was always filmmaking, and in fact, my first exposure to photography was the photography class at the college where we did film. We used film photography.
Okay.
The thing is, I sometimes market myself as a photographer because technically speaking, I do know a bit of photography.
Yes.
But it's not quite in line with who I am because I don't take a lot of photos recreationally and I don't keep a lot of photos. For some reason, I find I have no real use for a lot of photos. I don't keep a lot of photos on my phone.
Except for the piano.
Yeah, that's not even on there.
No.
So I don't keep photos on my phone.
Yeah. Oh, that was your other camera.
I have a photo on my phone. It's not even a photo, though, because it's a graphic of the circle of fifths, which is a tool for musicians. And I think the reason for that is because I want to be very practical when I quote unquote take photos. Like say if I need to remember, oh, when is this place open? I'll snap a photo of the hours on the door.
Yes.
Eventually, I'm going to remember when that place is open, and then when I do, I don't need a photo. I'm going to delete it.
Okay. Yep.
In the current age of photography, where everyone thinks they're a photographer and such, and
everyone is a photographer,
and photography is so accessible, easy to do. You'll see people like take a trip, go somewhere, and they're spending every second of their time taking photos of where they are. In my case, I want to spend my time and energy being there.
Yep.
and not taking
too.
photos.
Me too.
You know? Because people are like, oh, we're taking photos to remember we were here. I went there. I remember I was there.
And if you're not fully immersed in it, then...
And guess what? If I don't remember I was there, everyone else was taking photos. I have theirs to reference.
Yeah. It is that tricky, you want to have something, but on the other hand, if your experience is mediated by a screen, which is what happens when you're taking photos, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
You
say you don't really think of yourself as someone who knows about photography, but do you take photos recreationally?
I tend to be more practical.
Is it more to document your artwork?
No.
Or
if I have to, but just in my current job, because part of it is documenting things that are happening here at the Farmington Valley Arts Center, or putting it on social media, or sending images to, in a local newspaper, because I'm writing a press release and they're asking for images. So many times I'm just in the situation where I have to be the person that's taking the photo. So it could be something as, straightforward as, an artist is here and there's no one else to take a picture and I want to send a press release. So I take a picture of their work and write the press release. I'm very comfortable doing the writing part. I've had to get better at so it's more of documentation. But then I have 2 really cute grandchildren. So that would be, I would take cute pictures of them. Maybe I'm babysitting for them and, I'll send a picture to my son and daughter-in-law saying, this is what we're doing right now, that kind of a thing. So it's more conversational, I guess, rather than taking a photograph with the intent of printing it and framing it. I never do that. Yeah, it's much more practical, more along the lines of what you were saying.
Okay. Fuck photos, guys. No. Where exactly are you from?
I grew up in Massachusetts.
Where in Massachusetts?
In Springfield area. So not far from where we are now. And my husband went to law school at UConn, and we ended up just settling here because he graduated from UConn, and that's where all of his connections were. He went into his practice here. So we raised our family here, and then I became involved with the Farmington Valley Arts Center as an artist. Then I was a board member, and now executive director. So I've been here for over 10 years.
Were you always making art as a child?
Yes, one way or another. And I always was working with stuff I just found around. I come from a big family, didn't have a lot of money. So I would find a table on the side of the road and I'd take it home and sand it down and paint it. And then I'd have a new table in my bedroom. And so fast forward to what I'm doing now, and you remember from the photographs of my work, I am just fascinated with objects that carry their own story, and then putting them together to create the next chapter in that story. Old tools or peeling paint on wood and with patina that has, kind of been washed away by time, and figuring out how I can assemble those things. But I never thought that was art, because, art's painting, photography, sculpture. And I think in the last probably, 20, 30 years, fine craft and fine art have the lines have blurred. So when I was doing stuff, I was getting my teaching degree and I started really getting into the found object art. And I would be saying, I remember during a critique, I was like, well, this isn't really art. And one of my professors just said, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's this. It's, the design, the components, the composition, the story, the intent, how you're putting it together. But I think it's because of the materials not being valued as much. It's like an oil painter is like the top of the heap. And then, but somebody who's maybe crocheting something But meanwhile, today, I mean, some of the crochet art, I mean, giant human scale sculptures. I just saw them the other day in an exhibit that I think is in Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken. Someone is crocheting, which is, you know, pot holders and antimacassars, but they're doing giant life size forms and sculptures with a crochet needle. So it is a different way of looking at things and understanding that in fact it is art. And what is art anyway, which is a giant question that 4 hours later we could still be talking about. This
penchant for found objects and repurposing them, even if not conscious, repurposing them into something artful has been around since you were very young.
Absolutely.
Since how young?
Just 5 or 6 years old. Because it was not, you know, my parents were children of Depression era parents. So you would never throw anything away. You would reuse everything. And it was just how you did it. I mean, I had a grandmother who would use a tea bag and then hang it up on a hook that she had over her sink so that she could use it again for a second cup of tea in the afternoon. You know, you would, in this age of consumerism and just, you know, I'll buy a new one and just, I mean, that just was not how I grew up. And we didn't have a lot of extra money to be going out and doing that, which made us value what we had more and then figure out how can I reuse this? I mean, fast forward to where we are now and it's like, okay, so now it's cool. Now it's the right thing to do. But back then it was the only thing to do.
Yeah. Where'd you go to school?
I went to CCSU to get my art ed degree, and then
at Central Connecticut State University.
Yep. It was an amazing program. It was a fantastic experience, and then I was a teacher, and then I got my master's from Wesleyan
University. Was the intention always to become an art teacher?
No. I jokingly refer to my careers in my life. It's like now I'm on my 20th career. I've owned a business. I've taught. I've volunteered. I was a florist. I was an event planner. So many different things, but all sort of related to each other. And I had done so much volunteering in schools. A very good friend of mine who was a teacher said, you know what? Instead of just volunteering in schools, why don't you go back and get your art ed degree? And it's a really great career, and it will be a nice career I was 50 at the time, for sort of your, you know, the last chapter of your career. And I believed her. So I went to CCSU and for 4 years, it was amazing experience. And then became a teacher. It was, I joke and will say, I still haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. And if an opportunity comes, right? But a little bit of an age difference here.
Well, granted, that's more because I'm not really sure when I'm going to grow up.
There you go.
Because all my life, I was thinking studious, bookish Asian kid. I'm going to go into sciences, hard sciences.
Were you a musician along the way too?
No, not really.
Or that came in later?
It wasn't until about high school, in middle of high school, where the arts kind of crashed into me. I became disillusioned with my education, my plan of pursuing a career in astrophysics, and I just thought, I don't want to study physics. I don't. Yeah. I think it was when I first started playing music that really threw me off the path. Yeah. Because I picked up guitar, piano, and I was so enamored with the world of music that I was shirking responsibilities, skipped class a single time.
Oh, I was going to say, come on.
Just I
skipped class once.
Yeah, I did.
Ooh,
it was
wild guy.
It was gym class. It didn't matter.
I mean, even I skipped gym class. I mean,
and I just wanted to sit in my room and play guitar and just get good. Yep. And because of that, I enrolled at the University of Connecticut right after high school. Okay.
Are you from Connecticut? Where did you grow up? Did you go to high school in Connecticut?
Yes. Okay. I was born in Farmington, but I was raised in Torrington. Okay. Where I still am, and I went to Torrington High School. Okay. And And I enrolled at the University of Connecticut as a physics major because even though I wanted to like take a year off to figure out what I want to do because I was becoming disillusioned with this idea and I wanted to like be a musician, I dropped out during my first semester because I just did not care enough to do anything, to complete any assignments.
And how did the family react to that?
They weren't happy. I wasn't happy. I floundered around a bit for like a year and a half, trying to be a musician, but failing because I had just started. I started playing when I was like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And you would think for someone who loved music as much as I did, oh, you should like go to music school, right? Well, no, that wouldn't really make sense because I had just started playing music very seriously during my last year of high school. And so, plus it was guitar. I didn't learn to read music.
Right.
And I wasn't going to be a year's worth of practice. I'm not going to be proficient enough to like go into an actual music program.
Right. Right.
And so, I had foregone this physics degree, dropped out, and floundered around for a bit until I was watching a movie. And at some point it hit me that arts and entertainment have been the only things that ever mattered to me. And so I thought, well, I can't go, I'm just not good enough of a musician. I didn't start early enough to really be good to like major in a music school. And so I wondered, what's the thing, the avenue by which I could be involved in the arts and entertainment that is not music, and that can give me that that craving for
Satisfy
the arts.
that.
And then I thought, it's film, it's filmmaking, because learning how to make films does give you a specialized enough set of skills that perhaps it would be worth, say, getting a degree in it. Not only that, but I see film as the ultimate culmination of all other arts, because you've got writing, directing, acting, music, photography / cinematography, costume design, set design. It
all of the categories at the Academy Awards.
Yes, exactly. And it brings everything together. And so I thought, okay, I'll go into filmmaking. That's what it was going to be.
Okay.
So I enrolled at the Northwestern Connecticut Community College in fall 2016 to get a degree in digital media, because that is the major there closest to what you wanted to pursue. Closest to filmmaking, because that one of the main bits of digital media is videography. And now I've since transferred. I got my degree there, and I've since transferred to the University of Hartford, where I'm double majoring in film and English.
Oh, okay.
With a minor in music.
Cool. This I did not know.
You learn things on the podcast.
Yes. So, how long will that take you? So the program that you completed at NCCC was 2 years?
2 years, yes.
Okay. And then what is this program? What is it, like 3 years?
These 3 or 4 programs.
Well, yeah, and you're overachieving.
So yes. So what happened? So here's the laydown. The 2 years I spent at Northwestern in an art program, a fine arts program, is not what normal people do. Normal people who are smart, not me, go to community college to get to take care of their general education requirements.
Yes.
I got a specific degree in a fine arts field, which would really help if I were enrolled in the Hartford Art School.
Yes.
But I am not. I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences, where film and English are housed.
Okay.
I was initially accepted as solely a film major. And if I stayed that, I would be out in like 2-ish years.
Oh, okay.
But then I thought, a degree in film is not doing me many favors. I guess and the only other thing I would tolerate studying is English. So I figured I would double major in English.
Okay.
But then I also knew that
well, I'm here.
A degree in English is not doing me many favors. I see they have their own program where you get certified to teach high school as you earn your English degree. So I'm like, oh, I'll do that too. So 2 majors, film, English,
a certificate program,
and a certification in education. It's almost like I'm triple majoring.
Yeah.
And then I added a minor in music because for some reason I hate myself. And
stop. Well, it's like while you were there and you have the opportunity.
Yeah, it's me trying. It's me trying to like maximize the opportunity because any which way you slice it, that diploma they're going to hand me is going to be very expensive.
Yes. And
even though I was a transfer admission, they gave me a scholarship for 4 years. It's not a full scholarship, but it was rather generous.
Yeah.
And I thought I should exploit this.
Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of it, really.
And I see all these other people who are majors, double majors, and minors in things that are like closely related. Like people who double major in communications and film.
Yes.
Even though, at least in my school, they're housed under the same department, the School of Communication. And I thought, why would you do that? Those are close enough that, at least I think, that sounds kind of just so much overlap.
Yeah, it's like a major and a half, not a double major.
And or people who major in film but minor in communications. It's still like that feels like so much overlap.
It's still in the same world.
I wanted, for some reason, to spread myself so thin, have a major in English, a major in English, a major in filmmaking, that's certification to teach English, and then a minor in music because
they're all related. It's just that there's not overlap. I mean, it's like there's connected. It's like more of a web.
It was me trying to like build a web upon myself that connected arts.
Yes.
All arts.
Yep.
That's what it was.
Do you like to write? Again, another literary arts. Yes. I don't know. With English, you have to write.
I would say I like having written.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you ever do recreational writing.
I do.
Writing's a bitch.
Well, it's like anything. I mean, it's like so is making art. I mean, there's a process, and it's roll up your sleeves and do the work.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe not fiction writing or writing like fictional prose. Maybe that's not my bag,
right?
Even though I would want it to be. I guess I can write essays, kind of. I mean, I won awards for it. But
do you like writing? So do you like writing essays?
Sort of. I wouldn't say like essays, like papers, but I've done like personal essays that are more kind of free form, and it's essentially me just putting thoughts on paper, not exactly forming an argument for this thing, but it still has just a bit of structure enough from my English education.
Yes.
For my education, learning English and how prose can be put together in a way that's cohesive.
Yes,
it's kind of baked into the way I write in a way that it can be structured enough, even though I am like almost free writing, that it does have a beginning, middle and end.
Yeah,
but I think the main bit of writing. The main branch of writing that I would want to do is screenwriting for film. Which is
definitely a specialty. It's different than an essay. I mean,
it's much different.
I'm thinking like if you're doing,
Have you ever looked at a screenplay before?
I have, as a matter of fact. My husband just wrote one. I've looked at
Can I get in touch with him?
I've looked at it many times. Yeah. Well, he wrote a book.
Okay.
And then there was interest in it being a movie. But these things, the interest, it's like it gets to a point and then it, even with famous people, it's like, oh, that project never happened. Oh, it was on the shelf for X amount of years and so-and-so optioned it later and it never happened or whatever. And most recently, there's been interest in it being a play. So he has been writing it with that in mind. So he did screenwriting and now it's a play thing. So sort of looked at his book in a 360 kind of way. And because the book was something he wrote, we've been married a long time, but it was part of his life when he was working with a woman who was in a wheelchair. She had CP and she wanted to write an autobiography when she found out he was an English major. And he said, absolutely. She was nonverbal.
Oh,
so
this is like a my left foot kind of thing.
Yep. That would be definitely a good comparison. She was institutionalized. No one, because that's what happened back then. I mean, she was born in 1952. And so parents couldn't take care of her and they said, oh, we'll put her in an institution. So when they tested her for her intelligence, they're like, they didn't say she was retarded, but they said she was like very low intelligence. Well, because she couldn't respond verbally. She never spoke a word. She would, and this is the name of the book, she would raise her eyes to say yes and lower them to say no. So it was completely just signals. She would make some sounds and stuff. He wrote a book with 2 word boards with about 400 words. So it was a process of pointing to the words. Anyway, fast forward to now. So he wrote the book and then he's writing this play and had done screenwriting. And fascinating to me just because he'll run it by me because, I was living it along with him, but just the different ways of writing and how that has to be structured.
Yeah, because they all have writing in the art form title, but they're such different forms or different mediums that, say, with prose, it's all you have is text on a page. You can be like Tolkien and spend a page and a half describing a door. That's what it's meant for. For screenwriting, it's film. It's a visual medium, and the grammar by which you describe things, or I think of screenwriting as if almost like you're telling a friend a story, like you're in person and you're talking to them. Like now, it tends to be very quick. The only time it's not is like if you just have to take a moment to describe something, a detail that's very important.
Yes.
Man, this guy came in and he kicked this guy, then he punched this other guy, then he left, and then someone came in and was like, what the hell is going on? And then everyone died. That is the pace at which you need to be able to write and read the screenplay.
Yes.
And with playwriting, I don't have much experience in playwriting, but it's all, as far as I can tell, it's all about drama based in action and dialogue. Because, say, the difference between film and plays, drama, I guess, is with film you have again all the arts there to play around with, such as
and you can edit it.
Yeah, editing and production design and
sound effects and all of that.
But since plays are live performances in a theater, it's really all about the acting, the characters, their decisions
Benson
they make,
walks in,
how they interact with each other.
Benson says, hi, Carol, nice to see you. Carol sits back and says, who are you?
Yeah. And, and in a way, that forms the basis for films that are not Star Wars. Those kind of small scale, very low key personal stories that are like Woody Allen-y or whatever. Woody Allen is a playwright. And in a way, they're all in a way looking at the same thing with different lenses. They're all just storytelling. Yep. Which means characters, conflict, a certain structure, plot, a certain structure to it where it's exposition, introducing the world, conflict, rising action to a climax, and then the denouement. But they're just looking at it in a different way and have different tools by which they convey their stories.
Yes.
Different tool sets and a system by which that works for that medium.
So astrophysics out the window. Filmmaking in, with a sprinkling of do you picture oh no, I know what I was thinking when we were talking about that, adding one more thing. So here we are on a podcast. So how does that fit into, I mean, I can guess how it fits in. So then you were like, oh, so then I think I'll just do the podcast. How did that happen?
So when I said arts and entertainment are the only things that ever matter to me, that means everything from film, television, theater, literature, stand-up comedy, and podcasting. Okay. So it's me, this, you could say, phase of my life is me trying to maximize my contact and involvement with the arts, which includes something like podcasting. I don't know if you listen to many podcasts.
I don't listen to many, but I have listened to some. So I am familiar with them.
Let me know if you've heard of these, but my favorites are WTF with Mark Maron.
Nope.
The Nerdist.
Nope.
Well, my favorites, they're the reason they're my favorites is they're kind of conversation interviews with people. But they are more conversations than interviews. Because when you think about interviews in the traditional sense, it's very one-sided. Yeah. It's like, I ask you questions, you answer them. That's about it. There's a give and since they are conversations, there's a give and take. You know, like me telling my whole life story.
Well, and you said to me, you said, I said, how does this work? And you said, we're going to just have a conversation, but you can ask me questions too. So I believed you. And so I have been.
Because it also, because when people think they're being interviewed, it's very like, oh, we're on now. I'm going to be very uptight.
And I will not talk about pickles no matter how much you make me.
Put my walls up because I'm in interview mode. But some of my favorite moments on those podcasts are when they've been talking for like 15 minutes and then the guest goes, wait, are we on? Do we start? They kind of just slide in because they'll probably like talk to the guest for a while before they actually they sit down and start recording. Yeah. And at some point, the guest doesn't you can't tell when their conversation ends and the recording starts. Yeah.
It's not like there's a big dramatic pressing the finger onto a button.
Yeah. And because of that, people tend to be more relaxed and forthcoming when they're speaking. Not only that, but since it is long form, even if someone is very like guarded because they're like, oh, I'm in interview mode, at some point you're just going to wear them down. And then it's like, then they'll just be more conversational because like they're in it for so long. It's like, yeah. And then blah, 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 something I would never say in a 7-minute interview.
Yes. True.
On a late night talk show or something. Yeah. Not only that, but since I'm trying to emulate those, I'm doing this podcast in the spirit of my favorites. It's essentially me trying to have interesting conversations with other people so I can feed my curiosity and connect with them, but also to get out of the house.
Well, yeah. I mean, a casual conversation that involves headsets and microphones, that does put it in, it's not the most, it is a little bit like an interview just because of,
but
I feel like I'm on a sports show, because that's like the only time I really see this.
Yeah, but at some point you're talking long enough that you don't even notice the microphone in front of your face and it becomes incidental.
Right. Who's next on your list? Who's your next victim?
A friend of mine, I'm podcasting tomorrow. His name is Nathan. He's, I'm not sure what he does.
You'll find out tomorrow. Yeah. Well, hopefully. If he relaxes.
Well, he goes to the University of Hartford. The way we know each other is that we're both commuters. We drive to and from the university. Yes. Because we are too poor to afford housing. And also because...
Well, you live close, so not relatively-ish.
Close-ish.
Yeah.
I think he's in like Farmington area, so he's closer.
Yeah.
But the way we know each other is because we're both commuters, and also because we both play guitar a lot.
Huh.
So.
Okay. So you'll get to know him more.
Yeah. When exactly did you start? When did you stop teaching art?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long were you teaching art for?
So I only taught art for 10 years. Sadly, but also fortunately, my dad had Alzheimer's, and he was starting to fail, and my mom I felt needed support, and I also didn't know how these things were going to go. So I retired probably earlier than I would have, but as it happened, I got to spend some really great quality time with my dad before he passed away. So I don't know if I would still be teaching, because I've had, as I mentioned earlier, many careers, but I probably would have taught longer. But in retrospect, it was the absolute perfect thing to do, for that time. So, but I still teach now. I just do gigs here and there. I'll do a workshop. So I'll sub in for people. I did long-term sub positions because it is something that, I came to it later in life, and it was something I really enjoyed. And, so it's nice that I still have the opportunity to be able to do that sort of in a more casual and less scheduled way.
Throughout your entire adult life, were you like making artworks and selling them?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, some more than others, depending. I mean, I raised a family. I have 3 kids, and, so that was less time to do that, but always doing something creative. I mean, that has always been, in the same way that you were saying. I mean, that's the thing that is my passion, and it's the thing that I'm interested in. And I just have always kind of done and still would do. I mean, before I came over here today, I just decided I needed to, paint something. So it is, I can't imagine not having that be part of my life. And I can't imagine being somebody who said, I hear people say, "Oh, I'm so bored." And I think I think when you're a creative person, and that has always been part of your life, there's always something that's creative, even just like agreeing to do the podcast with you. I mean, I like having conversations, and like you, finding out more about people, but also finding out about a podcast. What is that? That's, it's a different experience. It's creative as well. And all of that stuff sort of adds to, the rich portfolio of experiences that I've had in my life. So, and, and even something like you and I work together on the one project, and then, super fun for me, this is Teacher Me, to see what you're doing now. And, you were actually kind of quiet when we worked together. And all of a sudden it's like outgoing Benson is here, which is fun, because it's like, I feel like you're finding your voice, and, seeing you in this kind of this kind of a situation is really fun.
It is.
Yeah.
This is, like I said, this phase of my life is me trying to maximize arts. Arts. But I'm not I wouldn't call myself a creative person. Because in my early life, I spent so much time. I was very math science. It was just very analytical.
Left brain.
I like looking at the nuts and bolts, just systems of things. But I wasn't very interested in the arts. I wasn't creative. I didn't like drawing or painting or playing music.
How about problem solving?
But sort of.
Because that's creative. Because I feel like science, I feel like that stuff is creative. It just doesn't get the label on it as much. But, looking at the nuts and bolts in the system, and you're looking at it analytically, that's problem solving, which is creative.
I suppose, yeah. But
without a paintbrush.
Yeah. Yeah. But I honestly didn't do a damn thing you could call creative until, say, I started playing music when I was in high school.
I'm surprised you didn't play music prior to that.
No.
Like, that was something that just, I would have thought
I liked music.
Entered it, yeah.
But it wasn't until, I think, well, first of all, I'm not I don't come from a musical family. Mm-hmm. The only things I ever heard in my youth were like Vietnamese karaoke tapes.
Okay.
And my family places no value in arts or specifically music. Mm-hmm. And as far as I can tell, I'm the only person in my entire family, including extended members, who plays an instrument and has a passion for music.
Really?
And I don't think it was until I was maybe 12 or something when I got an iPod and I started to find music to listen to. But I don't think it was good. I don't think it was good music. It was like good Fall Out Boy or whatever. And or something along those lines. And it wasn't until I was 15, I think, when I got this record, a compilation of U2.
Okay.
Called U2 18 Singles. Mm-hmm. And I listened for a few tracks. I'm like, man, these are great. And then I came on to this track titled Where the Streets Have No Name, which is the first track off the Joshua Tree from 1987. Mm-hmm. And I just could not believe the production behind it. This ethereal synthesizer and this shimmering guitar with echo and delay effects and this just entire wall of sound and the amount of space I could perceive in between the instruments in the mix.
Was that just like, moment?
Yeah, it was just, I'm like, what the hell is this? What? That's music? And then this is what music can be? And from then on, it was just all bets are off.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I became like an amateur musicologist. I would just research records and like get records and listen to them a lot, just sitting in my room.
Yeah.
Putting them on and
iPod life changer.
Yeah. But it was only like two-ish or 3 years from there when I thought, if I like music this much, obviously the next step is to become a musician, right? Thing is, I don't think it was so much I wanted to play music. I just wanted to be good at music. That was it.
Okay.
Because I thought, I love music this much, I'm going to pick up instruments. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if I'm going to like it. It's because, like, I looked at the guitar and it's like, I want to be good at that. If I'm such a fan of music, I want to be good at instruments. And music is so ingrained in my being. It is the most important thing to me, despite what my diploma will say. It's I lost my train of thought.
What kind of music do you listen to now? So you started with U2 was the kind of the watershed moment.
Yeah, I listened back then. It was like rock music. It was rock music. I was listening to U2. I was like getting into grunge. I listened to a lot of like the Beatles, the Who, Rolling Stones. But then at some point, and not only that, but since I didn't have anything to do and I was just I was sitting in my room listening to records, it was like accelerated. I just went through eras of music in like days, and I like stumbled upon jazz and like classical music. I'm just like, if I like music this much, that means I have to consume everything.
Yes.
And
I remember you were listening to classical music. You were listening to Yo-Yo Ma at one point when we were shooting.
I think so,
something.
yes.
Yeah, because you were like, oh, this is do you mind if I play music? And, and your choice, I was surprised by. I was like, huh, okay.
But that was also more because if I'm, say, riding in a car with a bunch of people I don't know very well, I'm not going to put on like Soundgarden.
No.
But I'm going to put on stuff like classical music or like an early Bob Dylan record or something that sounds rather inoffensive.
Yeah, it was like tailored to the audience.
It's rather accessible to most people, or like put on a Beatles record.
Sure.
Because, if you're putting on music for other people, that's not just like a close friend and you can put on anything with them. You want it to be something everyone can enjoy. I remember back when I was in my photography classes at Northwestern, we'd be working in a dark room and I appointed myself DJ, and most of what I put on was like ambient music because
I didn't know if you said ambient or ambient.
Ambient music.
Yes.
Because
it's putting people to sleep.
Because, Black Sabbath isn't very fit for that. Because, we're in the darkroom. We are working on developing our photos and stuff. And you want something on in the background that isn't too distracting.
Yeah.
And so I would put on stuff like Brian Eno, ambient kind of music, or something. It could be like music, actual songs with vocals and lyrics.
With words, yeah.
But it has to be something kind of understated and, again, inoffensive, kind of like a singer-songwriter record by like early Bob Dylan or Elliott Smith or something like that,
Yeah. Although it's funny when I was...
Also just jazz. Just jazz.
Yeah, jazz works. Depending on who you choose. Sometimes I'll find... there are people who like music in the background and people who don't.
Yeah.
And I like music in the background, but I find that depending on what I'm doing, it's almost like it's the soundtrack of what it is that I'm doing. And I'll sort of do the same artist because that is the mode of, if that artist is on, then I'm doing this. But if I'm doing something else, like if I'm doing some writing, and I end up doing a lot more writing than I thought I would, not recreational writing, but just, articles, press releases, that kind of stuff. So I have to have instrumentals.
Yeah.
Because it's like words and words, can't do it. But if I'm making art, then, I have my playlist of artists that I listen to when I'm doing that. And it's not even that I'm listening to them. It's just like they've become part of that experience. And it's almost like it's a Pavlovian response of Kebmo is on, so now I'm doing this. So it's interesting, but to me, it enhances the experience and it is part of the experience.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself panicking to put something on when like you have a lot of people over and like you want to be able to put something on, but not like offend anybody?
It's a tough one. I know. It's like, in fact, my husband is really good at figuring that stuff out. And so I will have him be like, all right, you're the DJ. Cause I think about that. He doesn't so much.
Yeah.
And it somehow works out just fine. With students, it's another story too. I mean, I taught K6 and, I would like to have music on in the background, but then you're like, okay, so I'd have to figure out who I could play or figure out what the G version of everything was. Cause even
just the Wiggles. Yeah.
The Wiggles, there's it. Darn it. I didn't know that. And, even the radio, I'm thinking like there are moms driving their kids around, some of the stuff on the radio. If I, as a teacher, had that on in the classroom and a kid went home and said, oh, Mrs. Kaplan had this. So yeah, it's very audience specific.
In my experience, I think the safest genre to go is probably soul music, because it's not exactly produced or arranged in a way to be very disruptive or piercing as some other music might be. So like an Al Green record I like to put on.
I was going to say like old soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Stevie Wonder, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, because, I mean, who doesn't love Stevie Wonder?
That's right.
But, because the way it is put together, it's, there are hooks, it's got a groove. Everyone can be comfortable listening to stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree. On the flip side, Bonnie Raitt is that person for me too, because it's just like it's good music. She's been around a long time. She's not going to be, saying offensive things, and it's like the newer version of folk music, which used to be something that would be along the same lines.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done.
I think this has been a really fun conversation. I'm glad we were able to get to the music piece because I'm interested in that about you. I just listen to it and like it. So
yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Benson.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Cool.
We did it.